So President Trump was asked why we're still in Afghanistan on Tucker Carlson's show. Let's see what he had to say in response.
2 American servicemen killed in Afghanistan this week. How much longer do you think our troops will stay?
Well, I'll tell you, I've wanted to pull them out, and I have pulled a lot out. We were at 16,000. We're down to about 9,000, which a lot of people don't know. In Syria, as you know, I've pulled most of them out. We've defeated the caliphate. Now, when you say caliphate and defeat, the caliphate's land. It's an area. We've taken back 100%. But these people, ISIS, they're stone cold crazy. So that doesn't mean somebody's not going to walk into a store and blow up a store, which they do. Yeah. You look at China, they don't police. They don't have troops everywhere. What they have is they have people taking out the minerals out of the ground. They don't have troops. We have a case in Afghanistan where we have troops on one mountain, very mountainous country, rough country, beautiful country actually in a lot of ways, but we have troops. And on the other mountain ridge, China's there with big excavating equipment taking out minerals. They don't have people. Now, it's pretty dangerous for them because their people tend to be shot as they're operating the machines. It's not exactly the safest place. So we've reduced the force very substantially in Afghanistan, which I don't talk about very much, and that's okay.
Could you see getting out entirely?
I'll tell you, the problem is, look, I would like to just get out. The problem is it just seems to be a lab for terrorists. It seems, I call it the Harvard of terrorists. When you look at the World Trade Center, they were trained. They didn't, by the way, they attacked their own country. They didn't come from Iraq, all right? They came from various other countries, but they all formed in Afghanistan. And it's probably because it's at the base of so many countries, but they all formed, and it's rough mountains, and you get a lot of, you get a lot of good hiding places. But I would leave very strong intelligence there. You have to watch, because they do, okay, I'll give you a tough one. If you were in my position and a great-looking central casting, and we have great generals, a great central casting general walks up to your office, I say, we're getting out. Yes, sir, we'll get out. Yes, sir. I said, what do you think of that? Sir, I'd rather attack them over there than attack them in our land. In other words, them coming. That's always a very tough decision, with what happened with the World Trade Center, et cetera, et cetera. When they say that, no matter how you feel, and you and I feel pretty much very similar, but when you're standing there and you have some really talented military people saying, I'd rather attack them over there than have them hit us over here and fight them on our land, it's something you always have to think about. Now, I would leave and will leave, we will be leaving very strong intelligence, far more than you would normally think, because it's very important. And we can do it that way, too. But we have reduced the forces very substantially in Afghanistan.
Oh, boy. Where to begin with this one? Oh, God. So that's all it took? All it took was a dude who looks like he's a general in a movie to walk into the Oval Office and tell Trump, sir, we better attack them over there so they don't attack us over here. That's all it took. That same bullshit argument has been used for well over a decade. And it never made sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. And in fact, if anything, the exact opposite is true, because we know that there's this notion of blowback, which is the more we meddle over there, the more we make ourselves a target. But that's really all it took. So Trump on the campaign trail half the time was pretending to be Mr. Non-Interventionist, Mr. These wars are so stupid, let's stop them and let's rebuild our own country. And then now the other half the time he said he wanted to bomb the shit out of them meaning ISIS, so he was half non-interventionist, half, brutal interventionist. But all it took was a general who looks like he's from a movie. So, serious question here. What if the general walked into the room and he was in normal clothes? He wasn't wearing his uniform. Would Trump have been more likely to stick to his guns in that scenario and say, no, we're getting out? I mean, this guy is such a child that I honestly believe that it was part of the fact that he looked like he was from, quote, central casting, unquote, that made Trump go, well, now this is serious. He's wearing a uniform. Dude, you're the president. You're the commander-in-chief. Stay true to what you said when you argued we should get out of Afghanistan, we should get out of Iraq, we should get out of Syria, but you're not doing it. And it's frustrating because he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, because he's also saying, well, it's tough, which is why we have to stay there, but also I significantly reduced the number of troops, so give me credit for that. Wait, which is it? Is it, oh my God, we have to stay there because, we don't want them to attack us over here, so we got to attack them over there? So do you want the credit for staying there, or do you want the credit for reducing the number of troops? If you're bragging about also reducing the number of troops, then doesn't that fly in the face of the logic of the other point, which is, hey, it's better to be over there? So then isn't reducing the number of troops by that logic also making us a bigger target? Again, I don't agree with that logic, but that's the logic being presented. So he's trying to say, again, classic Trump, say both things at once, and then hope that whoever's listening will just project onto you what they want you to believe. Now, I'm not saying that that's totally planned, because he's a jackass, but nonetheless, I think that's what's happening there. He says both things, and then the people who are more hawkish go, man, yeah, there's Trump destroying the caliphate. That's wonderful. Some people say that, and then other people say, oh, yep, he's drawing down the troops, and that's exactly what I want. I like how everybody I'm giving this, funny accent to. They don't all sound like that. But I think that's what he's doing. Let me say both things, and then you just project onto me whatever you want me to believe. And it's funny because with Tucker wasn't even trying there. If anything, I think Tucker was maybe just ever so slightly trying to prod Trump to say, yes, we're going to get out. But he ended up hanging himself with the tiny amount of rope that Tucker gave him. So it's really sad because, seriously, we've been there 18 years in Afghanistan. What do you think is going to change? What do you think is going to change? The original reason we were supposed to go in is, oh my God, we have to get Osama bin Laden. Well, he was in Pakistan, not Afghanistan, but he's also dead now, so mission accomplished, you can come home now. And then they just moved the goalposts. Well, yeah, it was Osama bin Laden, but then it was also Al-Qaeda. Okay, well, according to our own intelligence, there's less than 100 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. Mission accomplished, come home. Then they moved the goalposts again. Well, it was the Taliban who was protecting Al-Qaeda after Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11, so we got to stay there to fight the Taliban. Literally, about 50% of Afghanistan is controlled by the Taliban. You want to know why? They're a guerrilla army. And by the way, they will not attack us here, and they didn't attack us here. So, they're terrible, they're evil, but they're a guerrilla army. What are we going to do? That's a recipe for permanent occupation. For us to say, the Taliban, got to beat them. Well, if they control more than 50% of the territory in Afghanistan, you ain't going to beat them. You ain't going to beat them at all. This is like a Vietnam type situation where it's guerrilla warfare. And by the way, they control more of Afghanistan now than they did when we originally invaded. So that is an abject failure. And then there's a little hint that's dropped there about maybe what this has more to do with, which is China taking minerals. So, for those of you who don't know, Afghanistan has massive, gargantuan mineral wealth. And what Trump's saying there is, well, China's taken some of the minerals from Afghanistan, so, come on, we gotta stay there, because we gotta get some of the mineral wealth. Oh, see, this is a lot like, oh yeah, no, our other wars in the Middle East have nothing to do with oil. War in Iraq had nothing to do with oil, really? Well, oil production shot through the roof after our invasion and occupation. So what do you mean? It definitely was a big part of it. And in the instance of Afghanistan, because some people would say, well, they don't have oil wealth there. Yeah, but they have massive mineral wealth. So maybe that has something to do with it. And maybe, it's not a coincidence that Iran and Venezuela, which are the next two countries that were looking to try to force regime change, they are not U.S. allies, and they're also sitting on massive amounts of oil wealth. So maybe a lot of this has to do with geopolitical power and control as well as natural resources. That's definitely a big part of it, and the other stuff is a veneer over it of, oh, no, yeah, we're fighting terrorists. In that clip, Trump catches himself because he says, oh, Afghanistan is, quote, a lab for terrorists. I call it the Harvard for terrorists. And then he goes on to say, but they didn't come from there. They came from various other countries. Oh, tell me, Don, which other countries are you referring to? Please, go right ahead. It's Saudi Arabia. But now he's such a bitch that he doesn't even bring up Saudi Arabia as the place where these terrorists originated from. Why? because now he's like this with them. He loves them. First of all, they're spending a massive amount of money at his own hotels, so he's getting rich. They're putting money in his pocket, and that's a form of corruption. That's a form of violating the Emoluments Clause. But second of all, we got the weapons deal. We give them so many weapons every single year. So it's really pathetic what we're watching here. It's really pathetic. And now you know he's colossally full of shit. And no, we're not going to give you credit. He says, oh, I took down the number of troops from 16,000 to 9,000. Having 9,000 troops permanently occupying another foreign country that didn't attack us, that's not like, oh, do I get credit for leaving? No, because Obama did the same thing. He yo-yoed the troop levels. So did Bush. They yo-yoed the troop levels. Oh, okay, sometimes we're going to have more, sometimes we're going to have less, sometimes they're going to be, actively involved in combat, other times they're not. They're not going to be. So, do I get credit for drawing them down? No. Leaving 9,000 troops there, we're still at war. So that's not pulling out of the war. Stay true to what you said on the campaign trail and get the hell out. But he's not going to do it. Even when his buddy's trying to prod him in that direction, Tucker Carlson, he doesn't say he's going to do it. Instead, he talks about how there's a very sexy general, as Internet Hippo said on Twitter. There's a very sexy general who has convinced him simply because he's a general and he looks very official. Pretty much what you'd expect from our melting brain president.